All right, guys, let's get started if we can. Hey, guys. We need to get started. My name's J.B. McCuskey, and I am enormously proud to be here with my Republican Attorneys General's colleagues, in particular General Labrador here from Idaho, as tomorrow we prepare to argue a monumental case at the United States Supreme Court. And the reason that we are here is because Idaho and West Virginia passed common sense laws that delineate the athletic playing fields in our states between the sexes, right? And so West Virginia's law makes sure that every single woman and girl in West Virginia has a safe and fair playing field in order for them to earn and learn all of the amazing skills that come from competitive team athletics. What we know is over the last 50 years since Title IX has been passed, there has been an explosion of women that have ascended, as you can see from behind me, into the highest ranks of America's corporate ranks and into our government. And a large portion of those women have taken advantage of Title IX and played competitive sports in college and in high school. And what we're doing is a common sense step to make sure that all of that progress gets to continue. I think it is really important for everyone here to understand that these two cases are before the Supreme Court because athletes have chosen to sue the states of West Virginia and Idaho. We believe we're right on the facts, we know we're right on the Constitution, and we know we're right on the law. But most importantly, we're right on common sense. These laws make sense, they protect our women and girls, and we are all very proud to stand here to defend this very, very important issue. And all of the young ladies here who are going to talk to you about why and how sports mattered to them and how sports put them in a position to be here today talking with us. So thank you all so much. And I'd like to introduce Raul Labrador, the Attorney General of Idaho.
Thank you, JB. I'm Raul Labrador. I'm the Attorney General of the state of Idaho. I'm here as the Attorney General, but more importantly, I'm here as the father of a girl who played volleyball in high school. And all of my children, I have 5 children, 4 boys, 1 girl. They were all athletes. They were all tremendous students, tremendous athletes. And these opportunities that they had in high school were necessary for their development as adults. And I think that's why we're here today, because of common sense laws. The state of Idaho was the first state in the nation to pass a law preventing boys from competing in girls' sports. And at the time when the state of Idaho passed this law, the state of Idaho was told that this law was not necessary, that it was stupid, that it was a waste of time for us to be legislating on something like that, because there was very few women were going to be displaced. And ironically, the Ninth Circuit of the United States, when they were talking about boys competing in girls' sports many, many years ago, said that if only 1 girl would be displaced, that was enough for Title IX to be supported by the Ninth Circuit. But when it came to this issue, the Ninth Circuit decided to go a different way, and they ruled in the wrong way. And I think it's important for us to be before the Supreme Court. Common sense ideas are actually what should be ruling the United States, not other ideologies that have nothing to do with the reality of what's happening in society. So the bottom line is that women fought for decades to earn equal opportunities and athletic opportunities, and Idaho is defending those gains, defending the girls that are trying to compete, to succeed in life, to have greater opportunities. And I'm just proud that the state of Idaho is here with the state of West Virginia and all of this Republican AGs and all these different people that are supporting common sense legislation, and we hope that the Supreme Court can see it our way. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen. I'm also the chair of the Republican Attorney General Association. More importantly, I'm the father of a 15-year-old freshman high school athlete, my daughter, Reagan, playing basketball and volleyball. I'm proud to stand here today with my colleagues. Women's rights are under attack by the radical left. As Republican Attorneys General, we are committed to doing everything we can to protect them. Women and girls should feel safe in the locker rooms and have the opportunity to participate in fair competitions. My colleagues from Idaho and West Virginia are not the only AGs fighting these battles. This is happening all over the country. In 2021, the Montana legislature passed the Save Women's Sports Act that banned men from participating in women's sports. My office defended that law, but unfortunately, our state's far-left Supreme Court amazingly ruled that the Montana legislature doesn't have any authority over the Montana university system. During my first term, I fought back aggressively against the Joe Biden administration as it waged war on Title IX and on women's sports, putting the safety of girls and women at risk. Joe Biden's rules walked back years of progress for women in sports and threatened the safety of girls, undermining equal access to athletics. So Republican AGs fought back, with great success, I might add. In 2024, because of our lawsuit, the courts blocked the Biden administration from enforcing its primary rule that would have prohibited schools from distinguishing between males and females in athletic opportunities, putting women and girls at unfair risk. Thankfully, President Trump came in and rolled back even more of Joe Biden's gender nonsense. I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court of the United States, again, does the right thing and protects women and girls' rights, which are on the line this week. Denying biological reality does not create equality. This issue affects girls and women across the nation, not just in one state or in one school district. The consequences are felt nationwide. I and my fellow Republican attorneys general will continue to fight to protect women, defend parental rights, and uphold our state's laws against federal overreach. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce a woman who needs really no introduction to this group, but who's become a leader in this area and a leader in our country, Riley Gaines.
Goodness, well, thank you guys. First and foremost, I want to express deeply my gratitude that I have for the people standing up here. AG Knudsen, of course, AG McCuskey, AG Labrador, the others who are here, my Attorney General Scarametti. I understand that you have to stand behind this podium and maintain a level of decorum. I do not. So while, of course, I'm excited for the opportunity, for the case that will be heard tomorrow, truthfully, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off that we've reached a point where we seemingly have an entire political party who has diminished and erased our rights as women. That's exactly what this is. Don't let them frame it any other way. They love to hide behind words like compassion and empathy and inclusion. Let me be very, very clear. What me and what my teammates faced, it was not inclusive. It was exclusive, because we as women were excluded from participating, from competing, from calling ourselves champions, because we were sent the message, and there's lots of fingers to point. I mentioned the Democratic Party. You could point a finger at many different institutions, the NCAA being one of them. We were told loud and clear that our rights to safety, our rights to privacy in areas of undressing, our rights to equal opportunity, they didn't matter. They certainly didn't matter as much as the boy's feelings, the man's feelings, his happiness. We were told that mattered more than our rights. I'm not going to spend any time explaining my story. I think by now it's well documented. When I first used my voice, though, back in 2022, I felt alone. I really did. There were very few, at least my understanding at the time, who were willing to put their name and their face to such a controversial issue, to say the controversial thing that there are two sexes and that you can't change your sex and that each sex is deserving of equal opportunity, of privacy, and of safety. Now I understand, though, that I really wasn't alone. There were people, women, fighting far longer than I had been, even now at this time. So thank you to the AGs who are here. I've sat in many different legislative bodies and heard from the other side of the aisle. And again, I hate to make it partisan, because in reality, it's not a partisan issue, but in terms of elected representation and certainly how legacy media, mainstream media portrays these issues, you would think it's very polarized. It's not. But I've sat in legislative bodies where we've heard Democratic elected officials who say, look, this is just a solution in search of a problem. You know, we're just talking about middle school girls basketball. It doesn't really matter that much. Sports aren't really about winning, they're about happiness. That's what I've heard. Thank you guys for being willing to push back on that and to defend the rights of myself, my teammates, and girls across the country. Understand tomorrow, the cases that are being heard, it's not to determine if states must pass some sort of fairness in women's sports law. It's to determine if they even can. We are fighting for the bare minimum here. The bare minimum. Can we as women call ourselves champions? Can we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in an intimate area of undressing, such as a locker room, without having to fear a man walking into that space? Can we do those things? I surely hope, I'm very optimistic, that we will see a favorable ruling here. What I do know is public opinion isn't on their side, the other side, those who support the discrimination of women. Science isn't on their side. What happened to follow the science, by the way? They seemed to live by that mantra a few years ago, not anymore. Even though the Washington Post, hell must have frozen over. They put out an editorial piece today saying that exact same thing. Last thing here, I mentioned feeling alone a few years ago. I feel so validated in the stand that I took. I feel so supported, encouraged, optimistic for the future that my daughter will inherit. My husband and I, we just had a little baby girl about 3 months ago. And having her and looking at her, it changes the way you think about everything. I think initially when I approached this topic, of course, naturally you approach it with your own personal experience. That's not how I approach this topic anymore. I approach it in the light of my daughter and the opportunities that she will one day have, the opportunities to achieve and to succeed. We're in this time, like I said, where this issue has become one that has been painted to be divisive. Last thing I'll say is if our leaders cannot find it within themselves to protect women, all while claiming to be the party of and for women, then it's time we elect new leaders. Appreciate you guys, excited for tomorrow and to stand in lockstep with you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Riley. Hello, everyone. My name is Macy Petty. I'm the legislative strategist and women's sports spokesperson at Concerned Women for America. I would first like to thank the Republican Attorneys General Association for hosting this press conference and inviting us female athletes to share our stories, because long before I was here in Washington, D.C., storming the halls of Congress with truth, I was a 6-year-old female athlete with big-eyed dreams of playing college volleyball. That's all I wanted to do. I would spend hours outside learning how to overhand serve, and then of course then it came to nutrition and speed and trying to increase my vertical every single inch. And then I got to high school. And if you want to play in college volleyball, you better play travel volleyball. I never got to go to prom because every weekend was spent traveling across the country to these tournaments to try and impress all these college scouts that go to find the best of the best. And at one of these games in particular, I walked up to the court, and I'm telling you, my dreams came true. I got this pit in my stomach because the court was surrounded by college scouts. This was my moment. I had been fighting for this, to win them over and show them why I, more than anyone else on that court, deserved a spot on their collegiate team and maybe even a scholarship to pay for my degree. But instead of showing off those skills that I had been training my entire life to build, they watched a boy slam the ball in our faces. Now, there were plenty of opportunities for this boy to play at the boys' courts on the other side of the convention center, where, mind you, the nets are over 7 inches higher than our nets. But instead, it was humiliating, it was degrading to me as a female, and of course, it jeopardized my opportunity to even put that jersey on in the first place. But then I joined Concerned Women for America and started this fight for advocacy because I realized that maybe this issue was a lot bigger than I thought, because I thought it was obviously cheating, but USA Volleyball did absolutely nothing to stop it from happening to anybody else. So I joined this women's organization that, to my surprise, had been fighting this for years already, but had been laughed out of offices, humiliated on public stages because they were told they were making it up. This isn't a real issue. Well, I am so grateful that a decade later, the Supreme Court is finally taking our concerns seriously. But do not be surprised. This is an evil that is poisoning every American institution and taking our children as prey. But in the midst of that, we have brave leaders like these attorneys general, these female athletes, organizations, state leaders who are saying enough is enough and standing up for female athletes, for femininity, for God's design of male and female, and truth. Because there are phony leaders out there like Gavin Newsom, and Riley already said it, Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, who, mind you, is right down the street at his NCAA convention at National Harbor tomorrow. And if they like to sit here and say that they empower female athletes, well, then this is your personal invitation, Charlie Baker and Linda Livingstone. I will see you on the steps of the Supreme Court tomorrow rallying for female athletes at the Supreme Court. I cannot wait to be there myself and stand there with all of these attorneys generals, female athletes, and of course the Concerned Women for America leaders, because we have the power of prayer and truth on our side, and I'm ready to bring in that victory tomorrow.
Hi, thank you guys for having me today. My name is Jennifer Say. I was a longtime elite gymnast, 1986 national champion, longtime corporate executive, and current founder and CEO of XXXY Athletics. We are the only brand standing up for the protection of women's sports. I started gymnastics in 1974, just 2 years after Title IX passed. I think I'm the elder athlete here on this panel. By 1980, at just 11 years old, I made my first national team. I was training 6, 7, sometimes 10 hours a day in the summer by 11 years old. In 1985, I broke my femur on the world stage at my first world championships, and I came back 9 months later to become the U.S. national champion. I fought to come back from so many injuries. I faced so many obstacles, but I don't know if I could have had that fight in me if the deck was stacked against me from the start, if I had to compete against men, if I had to compete against boys who are stronger and faster. I don't know that I would have had that fight in me. Why will little girls even bother to compete at a certain point when they know that it doesn't matter to our institutions, that it isn't fair for them? I'm telling you, this is where this goes. They stop trying. They stop competing altogether. Why would they bother if they have no chance of making the team, the podium, of winning? Eventually they won't. They will stop trying. And we are telling little girls right now that they don't matter. We're telling them to sit down, be quiet, and let that boy have the medal, that his feelings matter more than your rights. That is the message that we are sending to little girls. That is the message that my generation has been fighting against, that I fight for more than that for my 9-year-old daughter right now. But this is the message, make no mistake, that our institutions, schools, universities, sport governing bodies like the NCAA and the USOPC, although they changed the rules, we'll see how that goes. This is what we've been saying to little girls, real girls. And we don't just take away their hopes and dreams of landing on the podium. We take away their opportunity to persevere, to learn discipline, to get up when they fall down. We take away their futures. Think about it. That's what they learn in sports. And we're telling them they don't matter and they will stop playing. I owe everything I am to sports. I learned to persevere no matter what. And believe me, I do. And we cannot take this away from little girls. They deserve these opportunities. We cannot take away their futures. There are two sexes. We cannot go backwards. To echo one thing that Riley said, and then I'll leave, I promise, we won't be done. We will win these cases, and 27 states will be permitted to leave these laws on the books. 23 states and Washington, D.C. will continue to double down and allow boys to compete in girls' sports. We need to change the cultural conversation. We need every mom in America to know that she must stand up in defense of her daughter and say, no, not my daughter's team. There are no boys on my daughter's team, and I'll be there fighting that fight, that cultural battle with this brand. Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here today. I'm Michaela Skinner, Olympic silver medalist at the Tokyo Olympics. I spent 20 years of my life competing at the highest level of gymnastics. It has shaped who I am in every way. In 2016, I qualified for the Olympic team, but I was named an alternate. I watched from the sidelines as my teammates won gold. I could have walked away, but I didn't. At the University of Utah, I became a 2-time national champion and a 26-time All-American. At 22, I made the decision to return to elite gymnastics and chase my Olympic dreams one more time. Then COVID hit. The games were delayed. I got COVID, was hospitalized with pneumonia, trained through a painful bone spur, and still kept going. My motto became simple: never give up. That mindset carried me through the chaos of the Tokyo Olympics, from publicly retiring to having a flight booked home to suddenly being called back to compete and ultimately earning a silver medal. It was the hardest and most meaningful moment of my career. Since then, I've entered a new season of life, becoming a mother and rediscovering who I am beyond competition. And I've also realized something else. Staying silent on issues that matter doesn't serve the next generation of girls. I've spent my entire life in women's sports. I know how rare and hard-won these opportunities are. That's why what's happening right now at the Supreme Court and in the states like Utah matters so much more. Women's sports exist because men and women are biologically different. In gymnastics, women don't compete on the rings. Why? Because men are stronger, and events are designed around physiological reality that's not controversial. It's common sense. Yet, today we are being told to ignore that reality. At the Paris Olympics, male athletes won gold medals in women's boxing, and the women who objected were shamed. Athletes get hurt every day, but we should never accept unfairness or danger as progress. When men compete in women's categories, it's unfair and unsafe, and everyone knows it. This moment is bigger than one athlete or one case. It's about whether we protect what women fought for or quietly give it away. Title IX opened doors for generations of girls like me. Women's sports gave us discipline, confidence, and a voice. We cannot protect women by eliminating the very spaces that allowed us to rise. Title IX is ours, women's sports are ours, and we're not going backwards. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Sophia Laurie, a former collegiate soccer player from California and the women's sports spokesperson for California Family Council. And I'm honored to stand here today with attorney generals and female athletes who are choosing to defend fairness and protect girls' sports. I come from a state where our attorney general refuses to do that, where female athletes are being asked to sacrifice their opportunities for the sake of ideology. Today is about saying something very simple and very clear. Girls deserve fairness, safety, and a level playing field. At 10 years old, all I dreamed about was becoming a college soccer player. I worked for it, and I earned my spot. My childhood dream became a reality. But today, girls across California and girls across the nation are losing that same chance. I know this because I get the calls from the female athletes across my state who are losing roster spots to boys, who are afraid of being injured, and who are watching their seasons and their dreams slip away. And our own Attorney General, Rob Bonta, won't lift a finger to protect girls. When I testified at the California State Capitol in defense of girls, an assembly member compared what we were saying to times of Nazi Germany. The Attorney General is here today. The Supreme Court, this is the last line of defense for millions of women and girls who leaders failed them. Now, the Supreme Court will decide something fundamental: whether states have the authority to protect women and girls based on reality. And if the court rules correctly, it will put real pressure on states like California by making one thing undeniable. You now have the right to protect women and girls. Now, will you? Every game, my dad would tell me, have at it. It meant to leave it all on the field, to do whatever I could to stop a goal from going in or to score a goal and to win the 50-50 balls. He now texts me, have at it, before events like this. And so to the attorney generals tomorrow, to the Supreme Court justices, and all the women and girls who are fighting for their own protection, have at it.
Hi, I'm Liz Murrell. I'm the Attorney General for the state of Louisiana. We filed the first lawsuit on the Biden administration rules. Lynn Fitch and I think Raul, we filed that first lawsuit 13 minutes after the rule was filed in the Federal Register. I'm just so grateful to the women who have just spoken and their bravery and their willingness to step up and to step out and to talk about their experiences and the reality of what this is doing to them. Their hard work is undeniable. The denial of their opportunities and replacing them with a male athlete on a women's team, on a podium with women, is undeniably unfair. Women who came before us 50 years ago obtained the protections under Title IX, and little did they know that 50 years later that those of us who have stood on their shoulders were going to be knocked down by men claiming that they were women. So, it's fundamentally unfair. We know that it is. The public knows that it is. We hope that the Supreme Court will acknowledge tomorrow that it is. And I'm grateful, most of all, to these women who are continually stepping forward and leading and providing an example to our daughters, to my nieces. My niece, who was 14 and had to change clothes in a bathroom, in a locker room with a boy, and was told she couldn't tell anybody about it. There was no one to tell. There was no one to complain. And if she did complain, no one would listen. That's not true. We're here to tell you that we will listen and that we are going to act on that, and that we're here to protect women, protect women's sports, and to defend the laws of our states that do that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Rokita, Attorney General for Indiana, and I am so grateful for the women athletes that have stood up and spoke, all the ones that they speak for my fellow attorneys general. Indiana was one of the first states to pass and enact into law a common sense law that said, you know what, men should play, boys should play in sports of their own sexes. And we were immediately sued, within minutes, by the left-leaning ACLU and a plaintiff who was only 10 years old. And you may be wondering why. We understand the case tomorrow is about Idaho and about West Virginia, and my fellow attorneys general there are doing a great job with that case. But why the other states? Well, let me tell you the Indiana story. Now, we were able to get that case against us dismissed. It was in large part, however, due to a technicality. The child plaintiff left the jurisdiction. And so we were able to get the case dismissed on that ground, but we were also able in that case to submit a ton of good evidence that supports everything that you've heard said so far today. And I'm pleased to report that the left-leaning ACLU has failed to find another plaintiff willing to stand up against that mountain of evidence and file another suit. But they could tomorrow in Indiana, because that dismissal is limited to our jurisdiction. And that's why tomorrow's Supreme Court case is so very important, that the justices get it right. In closing, we were asked to speak for a minute. I want to take the last 5 seconds, 10 seconds, to think. We talked about the legalities, we talked about the fairness, we talked about the common sense. I want you to think about the children in this. That plaintiff in Indiana was 10 years old. And I say, my opinion was co-opted by the left. That 10-year-old needs love. And so do all the rest like her. That 10-year-old needs therapy. What that 10-year-old and all the ones like that person doesn't need is to be affirmed in the wrongness that was that case in Indiana. So to my colleagues, good luck tomorrow. May justice prevail.
Thank you. I'm Derek Brand, the Attorney General for the state of Utah. And Utah, similar to Idaho, passed a law that was intended to protect women. And my office, in fact, has been litigating that issue for a number of years. And while we were successful in getting that law dismissed recently, the real question still remains, and that is 50 years after Title IX, will we be true to that promise that we made to women, or will we renege on that promise? I mean, the reality is categories in sports exist for two reasons: fairness and safety. They ensure that it's a real match, not a mismatch. They ensure that it is competition, not collision. I've spoken with parents all across my state, thousands of parents, and these are parents from both political parties. And the reality is, in spite of the many issues on which they disagree, I found that this is one issue on which they agree: the issue of ensuring fairness and a level playing field for our girls when it comes to sports. And so this is fundamentally not about politics. It's parental. It's not political. It's parental. And let me just say in conclusion that Title IX is not anti-anyone. It is pro-women. It is pro-fairness. It is pro-safety. And this is not about politics today. This is about opportunity. Thank you.
My name is Dave Yost. I am the Attorney General in Ohio. And I want to address the ladies who spoke here just a few moments ago. If any of you want to go to law school, we've got a job for you afterward. JP, I'm not sure you maybe shouldn't be thinking about where to go. There he is. I'm not sure you shouldn't be thinking about sharing time with a couple of them tomorrow at the Supreme Court, because they're pretty effective.
Yeah, we're good.
Look, there's not a lot to be said that hasn't been said, and I'm not going to try your patience by repeating what everyone else has already made, the points that have already been made. Ohio is here today to support this because, like other states across the union, we have a law too. It's not in front of the United States Supreme Court. It's in front of the Ohio Supreme Court. And tomorrow's proceedings and the ultimate decision that is rendered by SCOTUS is going to have an important role in the state sovereignty of all of those states about their ability to protect their girls and female athletes across the country. So I appreciate and commend the courage of the women who have come forward and raised this issue of fundamental fairness against an amazing tide of mainstream legacy media opposition. I appreciate their courage to raise the issue, and I'm looking forward to the arguments tomorrow and a verdict decision that will increase and support justice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Attorney General Jason Miyares of Virginia. You know, this entire debate that's been going across the country on these trans biological boys and women's sports is what I like to say, a case of people being so open-minded that your brain falls out. Because if I was to go back in time and talk to you in 2010 and say there'd be an entire political movement, an entire political party that absolutely supports biological boys and women's sports, in women's locker rooms and bathrooms and overnight trips, you would have said that's not possible. But now here we are, and that's what the purpose of our courts have been. I want to thank these remarkable women that are up here. Riley Gaines, these remarkable athletes, because they've exhibited, I think, one of the rarest traits you find in the public arena, which is courage. You have no idea the abuse they have received. You have no idea the loneliness they have felt. I remember meeting with the Roanoke College women's swim team in Virginia, in which they voted unanimously. They did not want a biological boy on their women's swim team. They were overruled, and the level of abuse they received on their campus made it untenable. They, in the face of this mob-like mentality of online harassment and in-your-face harassment, have displayed such courage, and it gives us, as Attorney Generals, courage as well. We're proud of what we've done in Virginia. We've said in the Attorney General's office in my time that we're the people's protector. We've indeed stood with my attorney generals across the country and joining multi-state coalitions challenging the Biden administration when they tried to put forth the Department of Education rule change prohibiting so-called sex discrimination to also mean trans athletes. We stood against them. When they even tried to tie aid to dependent children for school lunch programs to this left-wing trans ideology, we managed to push back and get them to change it. We're proud that Virginia has also joined Idaho and West Virginia in front of SCOTUS and filing amicus briefs. And what is indeed common sense? Common sense indeed is rolling the country right now. I just want to read from you today an op-ed from editorial board from this morning. And it said, biological boys roll back that progress when they take away roster spots, trophies, and scholarships from biological boys. Rather than unlawful discrimination, the laws being challenged in front of the Supreme Court are reasonable concessions to immutable reality. That's from the Washington Post today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if Riley Gaines had said the same thing, or any of these female athletes had said the same thing just 5 years ago on a college campus, they'd be shunned, they'd be ostracized, and they would be attacked. That is what leadership looks like. And so, yes, we often hear that this is a small problem every time there is a trophy taken away from a biological girl and given to a biological man. Every time there's a championship taken away, every time there is a scholarship taken away, it's denying an opportunity to our female athletes. That is the purpose of Title IX. Before Title IX, it was sometimes 2-to-1, 3-to-1 on college campuses of the number of scholarships given to male athletes, given to female athletes. The entire purpose is that it is equal. And every time this occurs, it is indeed a violation of Title IX. And this is exactly why we have our Supreme Court. We have a Supreme Court that despite what the loud left-wing mob may be occurring, that they're willing to stand in and protect our women's athletes and our young girls. And so, to echo General Rakita, my fervent prayer tomorrow is may justice prevail and protect our women athletes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Catherine Robertson, and I serve as Chief Counsel to the Alabama Attorney General. Alabama was very proud to lead the multi-state amicus brief in this case because Alabamians have a great deal of common sense, just like the states behind me. And in some ways, I just want to say, we told you so. I think it's important to reflect briefly on how we arrived at this moment, because I know when Alabama debated our law and many laws on this topic, we were told that it was a solution in need of a problem. But you may remember that this all started at the tail end of the Obama administration, when we were told that sharing private spaces between boys and girls was more about fairness and had nothing to do with public safety. In 2019, Jerry Nadler told us that arguments about bathrooms and sports were mere scare tactics. On the campaign trail in 2020, Joe Biden stated that the idea that trans children are a threat to sports or anyone else just isn't true. But then a year later, after he took office, Jen Psaki stated at the lectern that President Biden believed that trans kids should be able to play sports and that doing so doesn't pose a threat to fairness. But you've heard today that that wasn't true. So Alabama is proud of the role we've played. We're so grateful to partner with states like West Virginia and Idaho and others. We believe tomorrow we're going to win that case and hopefully put this issue to rest for a while. Thank you.
Adam Piper, Executive Director of the Republican Attorney General Association. Before we take it to questions, I want to spotlight a few statistics at Republican AGs just put up on X. Biological males have stolen from female athletes, like the ones behind us, 1,558 wins in the United States, including 855 podium medals, 33 state championships, 5 national titles, and 3 Olympic gold medals. This is not a mythical case. What we are fighting for, I'm a girl dad of a 6- and 8-year-old, is to keep our daughters safe and to ensure a fair and level playing field. Thank you all for covering this. With this, we'll take questions for the AGs and for the female champions behind us. Ma'am.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I work for the Women's. It's great to see all of you. We're grateful for all the work and advocacy you've all done. And as many of you point out, this is really a 90-10 issue, really a 99 issue. It doesn't really seem like there's much debate in terms of public discourse And yet, as some of you have pointed out, it's almost exclusively Democrats who are, this is the hill they've chosen to die on for some reason. Why do you think that is? I guess it's just kind of confusing to see such a non-negotiable issue still be contested at such a high level.
Well, thanks for the question. I really can't tell you why. I mean, I think pandering to coastal elites is definitely it. As a flyover state AG who has seen the conservative exodus out of California, I hope they keep doing it. This is fantastic for states like Montana. I think you're seeing, because it is a 90-10 issue, you are seeing common sense flee those blue states and come to red states like ours. I think this is an absolutely bonkers issue, but they keep doing it. And like I said, I hope they keep doing it because it's working out great for states like Montana and like Idaho and like West Virginia. But I mean, this is what happens when you pander to a small, screaming minority.
I just wanted to ask the Attorney General, what do you guys expect will happen in court tomorrow, and how long do you think it will be until we get an answer?
Thank you for the question. So we all fully expect that this is going to be a 9-0 decision. We are right on the facts. We're right on the Constitution. We are right in public opinion, but importantly, we're right on common sense. And these are the kind of issues that even conservatives and liberals can agree on. And so, I don't go into any argument assuming that I'm going to lose anybody. And so it is our mission and our goal to make sure that this case is decided in our favor. And we believe very, very strongly in our arguments. So we're looking for a 9-0 decision, and we feel really good about it. No, my solicitor, Michael Williams, and his team of Caleb David and Holly Wilson will be doing the argument.
Supreme Court rules?
It's sort of unknown, but we would estimate sometime at the end of June or in the middle of July. You're welcome.
So I'm not going to be as optimistic as JB. That's really good. I hope to get a 9-0 decision, but you're going to see a lot of arguments tomorrow where you're not going to be talking about the common sense issues, but you're going to talk about legal technicalities, and I think some of the justices on the court are going to have some issues with that. But I just want to address the previous question, which kind of ties into your question, is why have we not seen certain politicians and certain people, when it's an 80-20, 90-10 issue, why are we even here? That's one of the questions that I have. Why are we even here when it's such a common sense issue? But it's because of the lack of courage that people have. What, like Riley Gaines talked about, and many of these young women talked about, is that when they actually stood up for themselves and for their team players and their friends, they were ridiculed, they were made fun of, some of them were excluded from certain opportunities on the team, and it was very scary 5 years ago for people to stand up against these issues. Today it seems like most of us are on the same side, but 5 years ago that wasn't the case. When you talk to people privately, they would tell you that they didn't understand why these issues were even at the forefront of political discourse. But the reality is that it was very difficult to stand up 5 years ago. We were told in Idaho that we were stupid for taking on this case, for taking on this law. We had some attorneys that were saying that this law was unconstitutional. And I think it's very difficult when everyone in the media is attacking you, making fun of you, and saying bad things about you. Very few people stand up and do the courageous thing. And I'm grateful for Riley and all these other young women who stood up when nobody, it's actually easy today when the Washington Post is writing an editorial to stand up here, but these women were standing up way before that, and I'm grateful for them.
Jackson Thompson, Fox News. My question is for AG McCuskey. 2 young women in your state recently came forward with allegations of harassment and intimidation against the plaintiff in this case. What was your reaction when you saw this?
So I'm the father of a 10 and an 8-year-old girl, and my 10-year-old plays a lot of soccer, and I always tell her to give her hell. Your dad and I seem to have a lot in common. Anytime you think about a child being harassed, it gives you pause as a parent. And it isn't really part of our case, but harassment of any child of any kind in this country is inappropriate and it's wrong. And we all need to stand up to ensure that children aren't being harassed in any of their venues, but particularly in athletics. But I think probably Riley might have a really good way to answer this question too, probably from a more personal perspective than mine.
I talked to Adelea. She's the young girl in the story that you're referring to who had really heinous, vulgar things allegedly aimed at her in a locker room. Actually, I think it's important that I say it, and I'm going to use the word expletive where there's an expletive because I would not even feel comfortable saying this out loud. It's alleged that this boy said to this girl to suck his expletive while also saying he was going to stick his expletive in her expletive and her expletive. You probably can't even make sense of what I'm saying because that's how profane and vulgar it is. And we're talking about middle school age girls who have to worry about being told these things in an area of undressing. Think about yourself. Maybe you have a daughter. When you were in middle school, right? Like locker rooms aren't a comfortable place in general, right? Even when you're changing with your friends, people of your same sex. Now imagine adding a boy into that mix. I talked to Adelea. I talked to her father, Holden. I've talked to several attorneys with ADF who represent Adelea. The alleged things that were said to her as a parent myself now, and I would imagine my husband would have choice words to say if someone said things like that to our daughter. To speak, I don't want to speak on her behalf, but relaying some of the things she said to me, it traumatized her. It was feelings of total betrayal by a school. She actually reported this to the school. The school has done nothing. And to answer the question of why, right, it's an 80-20 issue. To speak directly to that, the Democrats have taken the wrong side of every 80-20 issue. Whether it's men and women's sports, whether it's parental rights, whether it's the unregulated child butchery that we're seeing of children performed by healthcare professionals, whether it's the border, whether it's crime, whether it's Maduro, which if you ask the people of Venezuela, that's not an 80-20 issue, that's like a 100-0 issue. These people say they can't stand Trump because he's a dictator, yet they're like actively defending a dictator. They take the wrong side of every single 80-20 issue. And I scratch my head about it too. I think a lot of it though, especially when we're talking about the gender ideology stuff, a lot of it boils down to money. Whether it's lobbyist groups, you look at the medicalization side of things again, these are what has been described by someone involved so my home is Nashville, Tennessee. I remember a video going viral, a leaked video of someone in the gender affirming care, I think President Trump describes it accurately, which is child mutilation clinic at Vanderbilt. He says, look, these kids are cash cows. Forget abortion. You know, we could charge $200, $300 an abortion. We're talking $50,000 to $70,000 per patient, and they're lifetime patients. They can't leave. They're stuck with us for life. This is awesome. So to answer that pretty directly, and what I've seen behind the scenes, even talking about the NCAA, money is what drives a lot of this. And they're so out of touch. They're out of touch with reality, with your everyday common sense American who intuitively knows that boys and girls are different.
Thanks so much for being here and doing this. I imagine this is most for AGs Knudsen and McCuskey, and then I'm curious for Sophia's standpoint. Well, on this, Riley was just talking a little bit about why this is not a bipartisan press conference, but I'm curious, as you talk with your Democratic counterparts, what is their sense on this 10% side of this issue? Why is this a partisan issue today in today's press conference? And sort of how you see you playing that out. And then, Riley, if you have a little more on what your message to NCAA is, we're talking a little bit about Charlie Baker, but what would you hope for them to do following tomorrow's case?
I haven't specifically spoken with any of my Democrat colleagues on this issue, but I think their silence speaks volumes. And I don't know that I need to necessarily speak with them in order to understand what their position is. And I think one of the things that I found just standing here just now is that I had my backbone up to defend this law this morning, but listening to the stories of these women who are standing up here next to me, I'm more ready to give them hell today than I was yesterday. And I think really what we saw here, and we talk a lot about the courage of these young women, is that they wouldn't be standing here if they didn't play competitive sports. And the reason why they have this courage and the reason why they are leaders is because they were able to participate in competitive athletics on a playing field that was fair and safe for them. And so I think what we're really seeing is the exact encapsulation of why we're here. These women are the exact reason why this fight is so important, because their lessons they learned in becoming elite athletes are what give them the courage and the leadership to be standing here today. And I want to make sure that my daughters have that same opportunity. And I will tell you, if my girls grow up to be anything like these girls, I will be one enormously proud father.
Thank you for your question. And just speaking as someone from California, I mean, we have had state law since 2013 through AB 1266 that has allowed males to play in girls' sports, use girls' locker rooms, and girls' restrooms. 2013 is when California introduced that. It took 12 years for us to have a legislator to be bold and courageous enough to simply say, no more. We had Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez and at the time Assemblymember Bill Asaley both introduced Save Girls Sports bills in 2025. Those were killed in their first committee hearing on a party line vote. The California legislature, our governor Gavin Newsom, liked to make it seem like this is a party issue, but it's not in California either. You are watching Christian conservative organizations lock hands with the San Francisco lesbian atheists. They are standing together united to protect girls' sports. So our legislative body and our governor is not standing with us. We saw Governor Gavin Newsom tell Charlie Kirk that this issue is deeply unfair. When he said that, those two bills were in the process to save girls' sports in California. Guess what? He didn't show up to their hearings. He didn't tell the Democrats to vote yes and pass those bills through. He said nothing to actually defend girls' sports. And so what we're seeing from the California Capitol is not representative of what Californians want. And our Attorney General, Rob Bonta, he just announced that he is going to run again for California Attorney General. He announced that yesterday. So I'm calling on him right now to lock hands with these attorney generals to stand and defend women's sports and join us in California to make a difference. If not, we need to see him lose his seat.
And I'll just say about the NCAA, this is an organization that, following President Trump's executive order back in February of last year, it basically just reinforced Title IX, saying no more federal funds to education institutions that prohibit opportunities on the basis of sex. This was fantastic. Of course, executive orders, they can be overturned just as quickly as they're instated, so certainly still need Congress to act on this. But we saw the NCAA following this release a statement saying that they were going to comply with President Trump's executive order. They did not at all. They said that very deceptively. Charlie Baker's really good at sitting on the fence and winking at both sides. That's exactly what he did then. That's what he has still been doing. He released a new policy saying that they were going to resort to things such as birth certificates. Well, in the United States, I think in 46 states, you can fraudulently change your birth certificates, and in countries all across the world. We have continued to see boys playing on girls' collegiate teams at every division, by the way. So there's an ongoing active lawsuit called Gaines versus NCAA. Really fun to sue someone with such deep pockets, by the way. This has been ongoing since, I believe, March of 2024. Gosh, so a long time now. But I don't know what I can and can't say specifically to the lawsuit, but we were in the discovery phase, and I believe we found very strong evidence that would indicate the NCAA had in fact received federal funds, and when you receive federal funds, you have to comply with federal law, which, of course, at the time of that national championships that myself and my teammates competed at against the male swimmer from University of Pennsylvania, of course they were not. So my message to Charlie Baker, is to echo what Macy said: be there tomorrow. I've seen so many ads on ESPN, which I hate watching ESPN, by the way. I won't even go there, owned by Disney. I've seen so many ads on ESPN where they talk about protecting women's sports. Then show up tomorrow, Charlie Baker. I hope this is written up in Fox tomorrow. I don't have much hope for the other outlets.
Yeah, I also just want to address the NCAA, since I had personally invited their president and chair of the board tomorrow. They can have my speaking spot if they want it, if they're going to protect women's sports. But I actually did spend 4 years in the NCAA as an NCAA athlete, and I spent every minute of that experience trying to change this policy from the inside. I started testifying on this issue when I was a freshman in college from my dorm room. And I will tell you, it became abundantly clear that the NCAA's worst nightmare are the female athletes that they say they represent and that they protect, especially if they have a good head on their shoulders. I used my credentials as an NCAA athlete to go to every single NCAA convention and try and talk to them. There was a couple times I happened to be in the same room or hallway as some of the executives, and I tried to have a peaceful conversation. I would consider myself a friendly person, but they went straight to the press and told them that I ambushed them. The female athletes that they claim to represent, they would not hear a single word from. So during my time in the NCAA, it became abundantly clear to me that they do not protect women. They do not care about women. Women are just a hurdle that they have to jump over and pretend that they care about. And so that is why I extended the invite. And my message to the NCAA is a challenge to prove me wrong.
I think before we go to Jackson, one thing to highlight that the NCAA should know is while Congress talks, Republican AGs work and win, as they found out in Tennessee, and in West Virginia and elsewhere. But Jackson, I think you had a question as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Jackson. What would it mean if you lose the case?
Well, we're not going to. And so I don't have a particular affinity for discussing events that I'm almost certain aren't going to happen. But losing this case would be monumental. I don't mean to overstate this, but if the Supreme Court sides with the ACLU on this case, every women's sports team in the entire United States would be illegal.
If anyone else wants to continue, the plans are on the way, so we need about 1.5 to 2 minutes.
You have a question here.
Go ahead, question, Mark.
Thanks for doing this. This is Caitlin with the Dale Communities Foundation. One of the plaintiffs in the case attempted to have it dismissed. Could any of the attorney generals address this and file this to the court tonight?
Yeah, that was in the state of Idaho. We were the first state in the nation to actually pass a law protecting women in sports. And the ACLU and this athlete was the first athlete to sue a state preventing the law from being enforced. It was enjoined in the federal district court. It was enjoined by the Ninth Circuit. They won at every step of the way. I became Attorney General 3 years ago, and I decided to defend this law all the way to the Supreme Court. I petitioned the Supreme Court to hear our case, and I argued very strongly and effectively that this law, this appeal should be heard. This athlete never decided to dismiss the case until the petition for cert was granted by the U.S. Supreme Court. So when they knew that they were in the Ninth